The clock on my kitchen counter read 11:42 p.m., its faint tick slicing through the silence of my Cedar Rapids apartment. I was nursing a lukewarm coffee, the kind you drink when you're too tired to sleep, when my phone lit up with a buzz that hit like a gunshot. A text from Elise, my wife of 12 years. "I'm not coming back. I've met someone better and moved your stuff to storage." Attached was a screenshot. $120,000 drained from our joint savings to her personal account. My gut twisted, like someone had jammed a knife in and turned it slow. 12 years, gone in 2 sentences and a bank transfer. I stared at the screen, the blue glow burning my eyes. Elise was supposed to be on a girls' trip in Scottsdale, sipping margaritas by a pool. Instead, she'd gutted our life while I sat here, a 48-year-old forensic accountant, blindsided in my own damn kitchen. The coffee mug shook in my hand, not from fear but from the weight of it all crashing down. I set it on the counter, the ceramic clinking too loud in the quiet. My first thought wasn't anger or tears. It was disbelief, sharp and cold, like stepping barefoot into snow. How do you process your wife torching everything you built without so much as a phone call? I read the text again, each word a jab to the chest. Someone better. The phrase stuck, a splinter under my skin. Better than me. The guy who funded her Pilates studio, who signed off on her luxury SUV, who stayed up late crunching numbers so she could chase her influencer dreams. I laughed, a bitter choke that didn't sound like me. The screenshot glared back, $120,000, the exact amount we'd saved for a lake house we'd talked about last Christmas. She hadn't just left, she'd robbed me blind on her way out. My mind raced, replaying her packing for the trip. The new sundress, the quick kiss on my cheek, her voice chirpy as she said, "Don't work too hard, Nathan." I'd smiled like an idiot, thinking she'd be back Sunday. Now I saw it for what it was, a performance. She'd been planning this maybe for weeks, maybe longer. The betrayal wasn't just the money or the guy, it was the lie she'd lived right in front of me. I pressed my palms into my eyes, trying to push back the ache spreading through my skull. I wanted to call, her to demand answers, but what would that fix? She'd made her move and I was the fool left holding the bag. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, and paced the kitchen. The wedding photo on the fridge caught my eye. Us at 36 and 30, grinning like we'd cracked the code to forever. I didn't recognize that guy anymore. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but with something heavier, like the air itself was pressing me down. I wasn't ready to scream or cry. I was too stunned, too raw. All I knew was this. Elise thought she'd played me, thought she'd walked away clean, but she didn't know me as well as she thought. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over her name, then set it down. Not yet. This wasn't over. I stood frozen in my Cedar Rapids kitchen, the wedding photo on the fridge staring back like a ghost I couldn't shake. The sting of Elise's text, her betrayal carved into those brutal words hung heavy, but I didn't yell or smash anything. My body moved on autopilot, as if routine could shield me from the wreckage. I grabbed the sponge from the sink, scrubbed the coffee ring off the counter, and wiped it dry with a dish towel. Each motion was deliberate, mechanical, like I could scrub away the hole she'd blown through my life. I turned off the faucet, the drip echoing in the stillness. My hands, steady from years of sifting through financial ledgers, felt useless now. I walked to the living room, flipped the light switch, and sank into the leather recliner. The cushions creaked under my weight, a sound too ordinary for the chaos in my head. I didn't cry or curse. I just sat, staring at the dark TV screen, my reflection a blurry stranger. My chest ached, not with sobs but with a dull, gnawing pressure like a fist squeezing my ribs. 12 years with Elise, and this was what it came to, a storage unit full of my things and an empty bank account. I reached for the remote, then dropped it. Pointless. Instead, I pulled my laptop from the side table, opened it, and logged into an email account Elise never knew about. 3 alerts from my bank security system blinked in the inbox, attempts to access hidden accounts I'd set up years ago. She was thorough, I'd give her that. My jaw tightened, but I didn't slam the lid shut. I closed the laptop, set it aside, and leaned back, the recliner groaning again. The room felt smaller, the walls closer, as if the life I'd built was shrinking around me. I got up, grabbed a glass from the cabinet, and filled it with water from the fridge. The cold burned my throat as I drank, a sharp reminder I was still here, still breathing. I set the glass down, the clink against the counter too loud, and glanced at the clock. 12:03 a.m. Time hadn't stopped, even if part of me wanted it to. My mind flickered to the guy she'd mentioned. Someone better. The word gnawed at me, but I pushed it down, focusing on the feel of the cool tile under my socks. I wasn't ready to unravel that knot. Not yet. I walked to the window, parting the blinds. The street below was quiet, streetlights casting long shadows across the asphalt. A neighbor's dog barked, sharp and distant. I let the blinds snap shut and returned to the kitchen, picking up my phone. No new messages. I set it face down, the weight of her absence settling deeper. I didn't call my brother Caleb or my mum, not because I couldn't, but because saying it out loud would make it real. Instead, I opened the fridge, grabbed a beer and twisted the cap off. The hiss felt louder than it should have. I took a sip, the bitterness grounding me, and leaned against the counter. My world had cracked open, but I stood there, silent, letting the fracture sink in, knowing I'd have to face it come morning. The beer bottle sweated in my grip, the Cedar Rapids kitchen dim under the flicker of a dying bulb. I leaned against the counter, the silence from Part 2's shock still clinging like damp fog, pulling my mind back to years I thought I'd never question. My memory snagged on a Saturday morning 8 years ago, Elise and me at a diner off I-380, splitting a stack of pancakes. She'd teased me about my tie, saying, "Nathan, you're the only guy who dresses like a CPA on a weekend." Her laugh was warm, her hand brushing mine, syrup sticky on her fingers. That was us then. Easy, tethered by small moments I thought would last. I shifted, the counter's edge biting into my hip, and the memory morphed. 2 years into our marriage, I'd come home to find her sketching logos for her Pilates studio on our dining table. "This is my dream, Nate," she'd said, eyes bright, voice fierce. I wrote the check for her startup costs that night, no questions asked, proud to back her fire. But the diner mornings faded. She stopped joking about my ties, her touches grew rare, replaced by late nights at the studio and distracted nods when I talked about my day. I set the beer down, the glass clinking against the granite, and my mind jumped to a winter evening 3 years back. We were at a holiday party. Her arm looped through mine, but her eyes kept darting to her phone. "Work stuff," she'd muttered when I raised an eyebrow, her smile tight. I'd let it slide, chalking it up to her growing Instagram fame, thousands of followers eating up her wellness posts. But that night, I'd caught her typing furiously in the bathroom, the door cracked, her face lit by the screen's glow. I didn't ask who she was texting. I should have. The kitchen bulb buzzed, yanking me back to now. My throat tightened, not from tears but from the slow burn of regret. I remembered our 5th anniversary, a weekend in Chicago. We'd walked Navy Pier, her head on my shoulder as we watched fireworks. "You're my rock, Nate," she'd whispered, her breath warm against my neck. When had that stopped being true? Last summer, she'd skipped our usual July 4th barbecue, claiming a client retreat. I'd grilled alone, neighbors asking where she was, my answers vague to dodge their pity. I paced to the stove, the clock glowing 12:17 a.m., each tick a reminder of how far we'd drifted. The memories stung because they weren't all bad. Those early days had felt real, solid, like a house built to last. But somewhere the foundation cracked, and I'd ignored the creaks. Elise's ambition, once a spark I admired, had turned into a wall between us. Her dreams grew bigger, flashier, while I stayed the same. Steady, predictable Nathan, the guy who balanced her books and paid her bills. My fist clenched, the ache in my chest spreading. Those moments, pancakes, pier walks, her calling me her rock, felt like relics now, artifacts of a life I'd lost without noticing. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to understand how I'd missed the shift, how I'd let her slip away. The kitchen felt colder, the bulbs flicker mocking my blindness. Elise hadn't just left. She'd rewritten our story, and I was the fool who hadn't read the ending. The kitchen bulb's flicker died, plunging my Cedar Rapids apartment into a dim haze, the weight of old memories from moments ago still clawing at me. I gripped the counter, the cold granite anchoring me as my mind sifted through the subtle shifts I'd ignored, signs that Elise's loyalty had been eroding long before her text. My pulse thudded, a quiet drumbeat of dread as I recalled the clues I'd seen but never challenged, each one a brick in the wall she'd built between us. 8 months back, Elise started wearing perfume again, a sharp floral scent that lingered. In the hallway. She'd stopped using it years ago, claiming it gave her headaches, but suddenly it was back, sprayed before she left for client meetings that ran late. I'd come home to an empty house, her gym bag gone, and find takeout. Containers in the trash, never enough for two. "Long day," she'd say when she breezed in, her voice clipped, avoiding my eyes. I'd nod, swallowing the question lodged in my throat. I paced to the sink, the floor creaking under my boots, and remembered her new obsession with her phone. She'd angle it away when typing, her fingers darting across the screen during dinner. Once I glimpsed a notification, a heart emoji from someone named Ryan H., before she swiped it away. "Just a client," she'd said, her laugh too quick, too high. I didn't push, didn't want to seem paranoid, but the unease settled in my gut like a stone, heavy and unmoving. Last spring she'd started driving. To Des Moines for wellness retreats, weekends that stretched into 3 days. "So you'd hate it, Nate," she'd told me, tossing her hair as she packed. "It's all green smoothies and meditation." I'd believed her, picturing yoga mats and incense, not late-night texts or someone else's cologne. But I noticed her car's mileage didn't match the trip, too many miles for a straight shot. I'd stood in our garage staring at the odometer, my jaw tight, telling myself it was nothing. I leaned against the fridge, its hum filling the quiet, and thought of the credit card statements. Small charges at boutiques and spas, places she never mentioned, started popping up a year ago. She'd always been flashy, new leggings, designer water bottles, but these felt different, like she was dressing for someone else's eyes. I'd log into our accounts, see the transactions, and close the browser without a word. A forensic accountant trained to spot fraud, and I couldn't or wouldn't call out my own wife. My breath hitched, the air thick with the sting of my own denial. These weren't just quirks. They were red flags waving while I looked the other way. Elise hadn't drifted. She'd planned her escape, step by calculated step, and I'd let her. The kitchen felt like a cage, trapping me with my failure to act. I gripped the sink's edge, knuckles pale, the turmoil inside me not loud but deep, a current pulling me under. I wasn't angry yet, not fully, just hollow, haunted by the truth I'd sensed, but refused to face. She'd been rewriting our life, and I'd been too busy balancing her books to notice the ink drying. Now, with her gone, those signs burned bright, each one a cut I couldn't ignore, urging me to do something before the wound grew deeper. The kitchen's shadows pressed against me, the hum of the fridge a faint pulse in the Cedar Rapids night, as the red flags from moments ago ignited a spark in my chest. No more standing idle. I was done being the guy who ignored the truth. My boots thudded on the linoleum as I strode to my office, the air thick with purpose. I flipped on the desk lamp, its harsh light cutting through the haze, and powered up my computer. My fingers steady despite the storm inside, typed the number for Caleb, my brother, a cybersecurity guru who'd helped me plan for worst-case scenarios years ago. "Nate, it's past midnight," Caleb's voice rasped through the phone, groggy but alert. "What's up?" I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking. Elise bolted, took a chunk of our savings. Time to roll out the plan. He paused, then asked, "You sure?" My jaw tightened. "Dead sure," I said, my tone clipped. "Final." I hung up and opened my secure banking portal, the one Elise didn't know existed. With a few clicks, I locked down our joint accounts, setting alerts to flag any unauthorized moves. My heart pounded. Not with panic, but with clarity, like a soldier gearing up for battle. I pulled up my lawyer's contact, a guy I'd worked with on fraud cases, and fired off an email with the details. Elise's transfer, the storage unit. Her text. "File for divorce, expedite it," I typed, attaching the screenshot she'd sent. My cursor hovered over send. the weight of 12 years tugging at me, but I clicked anyway. No turning back. Next, I accessed my private cloud drive, where I'd stashed financial records Elise never saw, trusts, LLCs, crypto wallets. 3 notifications popped up. Failed login attempts from an unfamiliar IP. Her or someone she trusted. My lips curled, not a smile, but a grim acknowledgement. She thought she could outmaneuver me. I stood, stretching my shoulders, the ache in. My chest now a focused burn. I grabbed a notepad and jotted down steps. Notify the bank's fraud team, request a freeze on the $120,000 transfer, pull credit reports for any hidden accounts. Each word I wrote was a brick in the wall I was building to protect what was mine. I didn't feel rage, not yet, just a cold, methodical drive, the kind that had made me a damn good accountant. Elise had underestimated me, and that was her. First mistake, my phone buzzed, Caleb texting a confirmation. Digital locks in place. Your accounts are Fort Knox. I nodded to myself, picturing Elise's confusion when her next move failed. I walked to the window, the city's lights faint through the glass, and felt the turmoil inside shift. It wasn't just about the money, or the betrayal. It was about reclaiming control. I'd spent years letting her call the shots, funding her dreams while ignoring my own. No more. The clock on my desk read 12:45 a.m., but sleep wasn't an option. I sat back down, opened a spreadsheet, and started mapping every asset she might target. My fingers flew, each keystroke a step toward turning her betrayal into her downfall. She'd started this war, but I was ready to fight, silent and relentless, with every tool I'd honed over decades. My Cedar Rapids office glowed under the desk lamp's stark beam, the spreadsheet from my late-night planning still open. Its numbers a battle map against Elise's betrayal. The resolve I'd forged minutes ago hardened as I leaned into my next move, fingers poised over the keyboard. I logged into a restricted financial database, a perk of my forensic accounting job, and typed Ryan Holt, the name I'd glimpsed on Elise's phone months back. My pulse quickened, a low thrum of anticipation, as the screen loaded with data that would peel back the lies she'd woven. Ryan Holt, 35, owned a flashy gym in West Des Moines, all neon signs and mirrored walls. But the numbers told a grimmer story. His business was drowning. 2 maxed-out credit lines, a lease payment 3 months behind, and a stack of unpaid vendor invoices. My eyes narrowed, the pieces clicking into place. Elise hadn't just left me for this guy, she'd bankrolled him. I dug deeper, cross-referencing their names, and froze. A car loan dated 3 months ago bore both their signatures. My stomach churned, not from shock, but from the audacity. She'd tied her name to his debts without a word to me. Then I found the real gut punch, a $200,000 equipment loan for Holt's gym, approved last fall. The document listed Elise as co-signer, leveraging our marital assets, my assets, as collateral. My name was on the form, scrawled in a signature that wasn't mine. Forgery. The word hissed in my mind, my grip tightening on the mouse. I leaned back, the chair's springs groaning, and stared at the ceiling, the betrayal cutting deeper than I'd braced for. Elise hadn't just cheated. She'd gambled my life's work on a failing hustler, forging my name to seal the deal. I stood, pacing the room, my boots scuffing the hardwood. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. I pulled up another report, my hands steady despite the fire in my chest. Bank records showed transfers, small at first, then bolder, from our joint account to an LLC tied to Holt's gym. Nearly $80,000 over 14 months siphoned under my nose. I'd been auditing fraud for corporations, yet missed the heist in my own marriage. The irony burned, my jaw clenching so hard it ached. I stopped at the bookshelf, my fingers tracing a photo of my dad, gone 5 years now. He'd warned me once over beers in his garage, "Watch who you trust, Nate. Love blinds you." I'd shrugged him off, but now his words echoed, sharp as a blade. Elise hadn't just broken our vows, she'd built a scheme, meticulous and ruthless, using my trust as her scaffold. My chest tightened, not with grief, but with a cold, seething clarity. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment fling. It was a calculated exit, and I'd been the mark. I sat back down, the clock showing 1:15 a.m., and saved the files to an encrypted drive. My breathing slowed, the turmoil inside sharpening into focus. Elise thought she'd outsmarted me, but she'd misjudged the man she'd married. I wasn't just a number cruncher. I was a hunter of lies, and her trail was lit up like a runway. The fight was on, and I'd strike when she least expected. For now, I closed the laptop. The click, loud in the quiet, my resolve as unyielding as the Iowa winter outside. The laptop's click still echoed in my Cedar Rapids office, the encrypted files from my late-night hunt, fueling a fire that burned hotter than rage. Elise's forgery and Ryan Holt's leeching had turned my shock into a blade, and I was ready to wield it. I grabbed my keys, the jangle sharp in the 1:30 a.m. quiet, and headed for my truck. My plan wasn't loud or reckless. It was a snare, set to let them trip over their own greed. I drove west toward Des Moines, the highway's hum steadying my pulse, my mind mapping every step to expose their house of cards. I pulled into the lot of Holt's gym, its neon sign buzzing like a cheap motel's. Inside, 20-somethings flexed, for selfies oblivious to the debt propping up the mirrors. I carried a manila folder, thick with printouts of the loan documents and transfer records I'd uncovered. Holt was behind the counter, all tanned swagger and protein shake bravado. "Nathan Carver," I said, locking eyes. He smirked, offering a handshake I ignored. "We need to talk alone." His grin faltered, but he led me to a glass-walled office, the gym's noise fading as the door shut. "This lays out every deal Elise tied to your gym, using our marriage as collateral," I said, sliding the folder across his desk. He flipped through it, his jaw tightening. "What's your angle, man?" he asked, voice low, defensive. I leaned forward, my tone ice. "No angle. Just making sure you know the banks will call those loans due when our divorce hits. Your gym's on borrowed time." I stood, leaving him with the papers, his silence louder than any protest. My chest thrummed, not with victory, but with the thrill of setting the bait. Back in my truck, I checked my phone. 7 missed calls from Elise, 3 texts pleading for a talk. I let them sit unanswered, each ignored buzz a twist of the Drab Spring. I drove to a 24-hour diner off the interstate, the kind with greasy menus and waitresses who don't pry. Over black coffee, I emailed my lawyer new instructions. Flag the forged signature with the bank's fraud unit. Expedite the asset freeze. My fingers moved with precision, each keystroke a brick in the wall I was building to bury their scheme. Elise thought she could manipulate me back to the table. She'd learn I wasn't that man anymore. I paid the bill, left a 10 on the table, and stepped into the pre-dawn chill. My breath fogged, the turmoil inside me a coiled spring ready to snap. I'd given Holt enough rope to hang himself. His next move would likely be to lean harder on Elise, pushing her to scramble. She'd call again, maybe show up, thinking she could charm her way out. I'd let her come, let her dig deeper, while I watched from the shadows. My truck's engine roared to life, the dashboard clock glowing 3 a.m. I wasn't sleeping tonight. Too much at stake. Elise and Holt had played their hand, betting I'd fold. They didn't know I'd been studying their game, waiting for the moment to flip the table. As I merged onto the highway, the road stretching dark and endless, I felt the weight of my own power, quiet but unshakable, ready to bring their world crashing down. The highway's rumble faded as I pulled into my Cedar Rapids driveway, the trap I'd set for Elise and Ryan Holt now a ticking bomb. Dawn broke gray and heavy, matching the steel in my veins after confronting Holt at his gym. I stepped inside, the house too still, and checked my phone. Elise's calls had stopped, replaced by a single text. "We need to meet. Now." I ignored it, my focus razor sharp. Today, in a downtown law office, their scheme would unravel, and I'd watch it burn. I arrived at the mediation room at 10 a.m., my lawyer Mark beside me, his briefcase stuffed with evidence. The air smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Elise walked in, her face pale under perfect makeup, Ryan's absence a silent admission of his crumbling empire. Her lawyer, a wiry guy in a cheap suit, cleared his throat. "We're here to negotiate a fair split," he began, voice oily. Mark slid a folder across the table, his eyes hard. "Fair stopped mattering when your client forged my client's signature," he said. opening the file to reveal bank reports. Elise's gaze flicked to me, her lips parting. "Nate, this is a mistake," she whispered, her voice trembling. I stared back, my face a mask, the turmoil inside locked tight. Mark continued, his tone clinical. "Over $80,000 funneled to Ryan Holt's failing business, forged loan documents using Nathan's assets as collateral. The bank's fraud team has referred it to the DA." The room went silent, the weight of truth crushing her bravado. Her lawyer skimmed the pages, his forehead beading sweat, and muttered, "We'll need to review this." Elise's hand shook, her nails digging into her palms. "You're ruining me," she hissed, eyes wet but defiant. I leaned forward, my voice low, steady. "You ruined yourself when you signed my name to lies," her lawyer whispered in her ear, urgent, but she shook her head, tears spilling. "Mark pushed a settlement agreement forward. Sign this and Nathan won't pursue theft charges for the personal items you took. The DA might ease up on the fraud case." Elise's shoulders slumped, her fight draining like air from a punctured tire. She grabbed the pen, her signature jagged, final. The room felt smaller, the air thick with the end of something I'd once cherished. I didn't gloat. There was no joy in watching her world collapse, only a grim satisfaction that justice had teeth. My chest ached, not for her but for the man I'd been, blind to her deceit. Mark gathered the papers, nodding at me. "It's done," he said, his voice a quiet anchor. Elise stood, her heels clicking as she left, her lawyer trailing like a shadow. I stayed seated, the folder's contents flashing in my mind, every forged line, every stolen dollar. The turmoil wasn't gone. It simmered, a low flame of betrayal I'd carry for years. But I'd drawn a line, reclaimed what was mine. Outside, the city buzzed, cars honking, life moving on. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing with a soft thud, sealing off the past. Elise and Holt would face their reckoning, bank seizures, maybe jail. But I was already looking ahead, my steps firm, my heart bruised but unbroken, ready to walk away from the ashes of their lies. The elevator's hum faded as I stepped onto the Cedar Rapids street, the mediation room's finality still ringing in my ears. Elise's trembling signature had ended our marriage, her scheme with Ryan Holt exposed and shattered. The October. The wind bit my face, sharp with the promise of winter, as I walked to my truck. My boots scraped the sidewalk, each step pulling me further from the wreckage of 12 years. Yet the ache in my chest pulsed, a raw wound of betrayal that no legal victory could fully heal. I climbed into the cab, the door slamming with a heavy thud, and gripped the steering wheel. My phone buzzed, Elise's name flashing. I let it ring, the sound grating until it stopped. Moments later, a voicemail notification appeared, but I didn't play it. I started the engine, the rumble grounding me, and drove toward the outskirts, where the city gave way to open fields. My mind churned, not with her tears or Holt's debts, but with the man I'd become. Someone who'd trusted too blindly, loved too easily. I pulled into a gravel lot by the Cedar River, the water glinting under a pale sun. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Elise. "Nate, please, let's talk." My jaw clenched, the temptation to reply flaring, then dying. I stepped out, the river's murmur steadying my breath, and walked to the bank. The grass crunched underfoot, damp from morning dew. I stood there, hands in my pockets, the weight of her betrayal pressing hard. She'd thought I'd bend, that I'd let her words pull me back. She was wrong. I dialed her number, my thumb, steady despite the storm inside. She answered on the first ring, her voice soft, pleading. "Nate, I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, words tumbling fast. "We can fix it." I stared at the river, its current relentless, and cut her off, my tone cold, final. "It's over, Elise. Don't call again. I'm done." I hung up before she could respond, blocking her number with a single tap. The silence that followed felt like freedom, sharp and clean, slicing through the chaos she'd left. My shoulders relaxed, the river's flow mirroring the clarity settling in me. I wasn't the guy who'd signed her checks or ignored her lies anymore. That Nathan was gone, buried under the truth I'd faced. The turmoil hadn't vanished, it lingered, a scar I'd carry, but it no longer owned me. I picked up a flat stone, skipped it across the water, watching the ripples fade. Elise would rebuild or crash, Holt would sink or swim. Their paths didn't cross mine anymore. I returned to the truck, the engine's growl a promise of movement. The dashboard clock read 11:45 a.m., the day stretching ahead, unclaimed. I drove back toward town, the fields blurring past, my mind already shifting to what came next, a life without her shadow. The pain of her deceit still throbbed, but it was mine to bear, not hers to wield. I'd walked away with my dignity, my strength forged in the fire of her lies. As the city skyline rose, I felt the first stirrings of something new. Not peace, not yet, but a resolve to live for myself, unbroken, untethered, ready to carve my own road. The Cedar Rapids skyline shrank in my rear view as I left the riverbank. Behind, the finality of cutting Elise out still fresh, a clean wound that stung but promised healing. I drove to a quiet neighborhood on the city's edge, where I'd leased a modest ranch house, nothing like the oversized place Elise had demanded. My new key turned smoothly in the lock, the door creaking open to bare walls and hardwood floors. The emptiness felt right, a blank slate for a man starting over at 48, carrying the scars of betrayal but no longer its prisoner. I dropped my duffel bag in the living room, the thud echoing in the unfurnished space. My first night, I unrolled, a sleeping bag on the floor, the simplicity grounding me. Mornings began with black coffee brewed on a cheap machine, sipped on the back porch as sparrows darted through the oaks. I bought a used workbench, started sanding down an old chair I'd found at a yard sale. The rhythm of the work, scrape, smooth, repeat, eased the knot in my chest, each stroke carving out space for something new. Weekends, my brother, Caleb, came by, hauling tools or a six-pack. "You're turning into Dad," he said one Saturday, grinning as we rebuilt a sagging fence. I laughed, the sound foreign but real, picturing our father's calloused hands fixing anything broken. We worked until dusk, the clang of hammers a kind of music, the labor stitching me back together. The turmoil of Elise's deceit hadn't vanished. It lingered, a dull ache, but it no longer dictated my days. I was building, not just a fence, but a life, one I chose. I took up running, pounding the trails near the Sac and Fox Preserve, my breath steady as the Iowa wind whipped past. The burn in my legs drowned out the echoes of her lies. I cooked simple meals, steak, potatoes, greens, savoring the act of feeding myself, no longer tethered to her preferences. At night, I read old westerns from a thrift store, their tales, of grit and redemption, a quiet companion. The house filled slowly, a couch, a rug, a photo of me and Caleb fishing as kids hung above the mantel. My accounting firm hummed along, but I delegated more, freeing afternoons to drive north to a cabin. My dad left us. There, by a lake fringed with pines, I'd cast a line, the water's ripple washing away the last of her shadow. The silence wasn't lonely. It was mine, earned through the fire I'd walked. The betrayal had carved me raw, but it also revealed a strength I hadn't known, a core that refused to break. I'm not whole yet, but I'm here, living on my terms, the pain a scar I wear without shame. My story's not unique. Betrayal hits hard, but it doesn't have to define you. I rebuilt by choosing myself, step by stubborn step. What about you? When life's kicked you down, how'd you get back up? What's the one thing that kept you going when the world turned against you? Share your fight. I'm listening.